Hi everyone, Ainsley here from Small Fry Creations. Today I'm going to show you how you can make bedside tables with resin art as your drawer front. Let's do it. As I can't get a full sheet of plywood home, I got the hardware store to quarter the sheet for me. Now here's a breakdown of the pieces laid out on the plywood. I wanted to make sure that I'd get the most out of each section, so my first step was to cut strips for the legs before cross-cutting the tops and the sides of the bedside tables. I took 2 sections of the plywood and cut 2 50mm strips from each. I put these aside and we'll come back to them later. I don't have a cross-cut sledge yet for my table saw, so I used my doorball jig and a circular saw to break down the pieces for the top and the bottom to rough dimensions. With the table saw set at a 45-degree angle, I could start to cut everything to final size. As I was making 2 tables, I made sure to cut all the matching pieces together before moving the fence and then making the next cut. The next step was to cut the tops and bottoms to width on the table saw and the sides on the miter saw. At this point I sanded the inside of the table, as this would be hard once everything was glued up. When it came to the glue up, I laid everything face down and then used blue painter's tape down the seams as my clamp. I could then flip everything over and start the glue up. I also added a band clamp to help pull everything together. Once the glue had dried, I removed everything from clamps and I reinforced the miters with dowels. Now if I was to do this again, I would do the dowels from the side so that the top remained a clean surface. Once the dowels were glued in, I gave everything a quick sand. I like to try and break up the sanding because, let's be honest, no one likes sanding. I could then turn my attention to the legs. I took my 50mm strips that I had cut earlier and cut the leg pieces to length. To cut the taper on the legs, I measured halfway in, which was 25mm, and then I drew a line from the 25mm up to the top corner. As I don't have a tapering jig, I got out my jig that I used to straighten boards on my table saw and I nailed some blocks into the right spot so that when I clamped down my piece, the line was on the edge of the jig. Then I could just run everything through the table saw. I wanted the legs to have a 15-degree splay, so with the miter saw set and a stop block in place, I could cut all the legs to final length. I measured and cut the connecting pieces for the legs with the same 15-degree angle. It was then time to glue everything together, and I used some brad nails to hold everything while the glue dried. At the same time, I also cut and fitted the back support of the legs and glued this into place. Now there are 100 ways to make a box, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I just simply glued and nailed my box together, and when sizing the box, I made sure to leave space for the drawer slides. In the past, I have always used store-bought drawer slides, but this time I wanted to try and make my own. I cut strips from leftover plywood, and I also cut some spacer blocks so that everything would be in the right and same spot. The strip on the drawer was placed in the middle, and I simply glued and nailed the runner into place. When attaching the runners to the inside of the drawers, I used a block and a runner as spacers and then nailed the top runner into place first. When attaching the bottom runner, I made sure that the fit was snug but still had some movement. With the back of the bedside table cut to size and glued into place, I could turn my attention to the drawer fronts. With the plywood measured and cut to size, I could start to think about what I wanted to do as a finish. Now, like always, there are a million ways that you can finish your project, but I wanted to try my hand at some resin art. I undercoated the fronts with a product called gesso. This product is made for resin and it gives it a great base and something for it to stick to. I mixed my resin as per the instructions, and if you are keen to know more about the resining process, I would suggest checking out my photo frame with resin video where I go over in detail the process and what you will need. I'll leave you a link in the description below. With the colours mixed, it was time to create some art. To attach the legs, I simply countersunk some screws through the legs and into the base of the table. I also glued and screwed the stretcher into place. After the drawer fronts had cured for 7 days, I could sand the backs flat and start to attach the drawer pulls. The screws that came with the drawer pulls were way too long, so I used the Dremel to cut them to length. I marked the centre of the drawer front and used a Forstner bit to countersink the screw head. Then it was just a matter of drilling all the way through and attaching the drawer pull. I figure you've seen a million people paint things, so I painted my table white off camera. Using levels, I clamped the drawer front into place and then screwed it in from the back. It was then time to sit back and enjoy the fruits of my labour. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, help me out by hitting that subscribe and like button, and I'll see you on the next one.